courtroom. The entire show ranting about it, and I'm like, I'm gonna stab you. Just, yes, that's true. You fellas ready? Alright, I will play you all the music at the end. Yeah, y'all don't have anyone behind, so take as long as you need. I'm playing poker.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to a special edition of the Stokastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me, as always, is Slim Cliffy, but you see the other guy on the screen. If you don't recognize him, not many people recognize him anymore. It doesn't really come on too often, but it is our boss, Jay Carey. He is very, very busy behind the scenes, but he is gracing us with his presence. How you doing today, boys?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's nice to see you guys. I've been watching every show so far this year, and you guys have been crushing it. So appreciate you letting me on to come and ruin one on the day with the biggest contest that we've seen in a long, long time.
Very excited. How you doing today, Cliffy?
Doing pretty good. I'm excited for this slate as well. Really a couple really nice contests over on DraftKings here tonight. I think the 444 on FanDuel is even doubled from it normally is. I don't play on FanDuel very often, but lots of real nice contests tonight. Lots of games to pick from. Pretty excited to just kind of dig in and see what Jake has to say, because he's the one we look to for the nuts day in and day out.
No, that's other way around.
And, you know, we have a 3-man screen on here, and holy crap, do I have a big head. I just have a giant melon. But anyway, we are sponsored by BetMGM. We have a nice promo coming up for you later. And before we get into the show, just remember to give us a like and subscribe. All you NBA guys in here, all you NFL guys in here, no NBA tonight. So give us a like and subscribe. Most of you guys are probably subscribed to the channel already, but if you aren't, please hit the subscribe button so you can keep up with our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. Don't forget, almost all of our content is available in podcast form, except for the live before locks, because there's no shelf life on those really, and is available on the platform of your choice. Help us out by giving a 5-star review. Before we get into the slate here, Cliffy, how was your weekend? You do all right in DFS?
No, I got cleaned out on Saturday. Didn't do too well yesterday in the old in the 3-gamer. I didn't go with Washington. Strome and Kuznetsov had pretty good games, so really needed those guys last night. A couple big defense performances as well. Eric Gustafsson, I think, hit the point bonus on DraftKings. I think Noah Hannafin for Calgary had the old combo meal, the shots and the block bonus for the Flames. So needed a couple right defensemen as well. There was probably more than one path to first place, but I found the path to about 100th.
Jake, how are those razor thin margins on 150 max treating you?
Yeah, razor thin margins. So that's a reference to someone mentioned that they're wondering if they should change up their strategy. I can't remember who it was in the Discord, and I was just saying that there's razor thin margins. Like the season's been going okay. I think I'm a little bit negative for the season. Last weekend, I mean, I've had a few sweats recently, so I feel like I'm on kind of the right track. But when you do get up there, if you're playing the $15 or $20 tonight on DK, the $4 on FanDuel, whatever it is, you really have to make those top 1%, those top 0.5% finishes count. Otherwise, getting second's great, like 5K or whatever. Tonight it's a little bit flatter on DK, but you really gotta bank. So you gotta be in it for the long haul, and a couple things go your way. Instead of getting second or third, you get first a couple of times. All of a sudden, you're looking at an amazing season rather than just an okay one.
Yeah, I mean the same. I guess like I'm a single entry player, but the same could be said like MME. You have to win a couple times. Single entry, you win once or twice, kind of makes your season. But yeah, it is razor thin no matter what you're playing. Hopefully, this is one of the bigger NHL nights of the season, so hopefully we all can win some money, but that's not always how it goes. But let's get into the 11-game slate tonight. It is a big slate. There are some big totals. For me, the good news is there's no Chicago one who's always over-owned, and I never know what to do with them. Timo Meyer's not on the slate. The Sharks aren't on the slate, so we don't have to get sharked at 3 a.m, although we do have a very spicy late hammer game tonight. But let's get into this slate. The first game of the night, we have the Arizona Coyotes with a 2.8 total heading into Buffalo. The Sabres have a 3.9. If I'm not mistaken, that is the biggest total of the night. Buffalo switched up their lines, though, and it is kind of a mess. Casey Middlestad's on the top line with Tage Thompson and JJ Peterka. Second line of Jeff Skinner, Dylan Cousins, and Alex Tuck. And then Victor Olofsson down on that third line. Now, the problem with that is the power play correlation is a mess. That being said, the Coyotes' penalty kill is really bad. The Coyotes defensively are not a great team. They're not the worst defensive team we've ever seen. I'm kind of hoping that Karel Vejmelka is in net for the Coyotes. But, Cliffy, what are you doing with these new Sabre lines tonight?
Yeah, I will say it is Vejmelka starting. That came down right before we came on the air. So that's a good start for anyone that wants to fade Buffalo. I want to start with that top line. I don't get Buffalo's love of Casey Middlestad. I really don't. He just hasn't done much at any point of his NHL career. So far this season, he has 1 point at even strength. He's one of the biggest drags on expected goals impacts that they have. And then they just shoot him right to the top line with Tage Thompson. If you look at Thompson's numbers over the last couple seasons, whenever he's not playing with Jeff Skinner, like the goal scoring is still good, but it goes down quite a bit. Like it goes down over 20%, and the expected goals goes down similarly. So like where Tage is really expensive on DK and FanDuel, like FanDuel is approaching almost $10,000. Like that's usually reserved for guys like Stamkos and Kucherov and McDavid and all those guys. Like having him in that tier, I know it's against Arizona, but having him in that tier with Casey Middlestat and a rookie and JJ Peterka on his wing, like I think there's enough reason to get away from, at least that Buffalo top line. I think the real question comes with that Buffalo second line of Skinner, Cousins, and Tuck, because Cousins I sneakily played pretty well over the last couple of years. It's just he's been normally charged with more defensive responsibilities, playing with the likes of like Kyle Okposo or Rasmus Asplund, or once in a while with Alex Tuck. But this is probably his best chance at offensive success. And Tuck and Skinner, both good offensive players. The only problem is they're coming in with a ton of ownership. That Buffalo second line coming in 13% by our top stacks tool, compared to a 7% top two stack percentage. Like you said, the power play correlation isn't great, considering, Kyle Okposo, down on the fourth line, Tage on the top line. The Buffalo second line, Cousins and Skinner typically do play pretty well offensively together. So like, I don't have a problem in a nutshell playing that line. It's just, do they come in 15% plus ownership on an 11-game slate? We've seen we have seen teams blow Arizona out of the water, but we've also seen teams really falter against them, kind of in a letdown situation, right? So if anything on the Buffalo side, it would definitely be that second line. I don't mind if you want to take a shot at a power play stack. Arizona does take penalties at an above average rate. So if you want to throw in Tage instead of Cousins, try to kind of dilute the ownership a little bit, I think that's fine. Buffalo too is in a good spot here against the Coyotes. It's just, I really, really worry about ownership. I think there are reasons to stay away from them here tonight. Like, if Arizona just gets out to a 1-0 lead, do these new Buffalo lines last longer than 20 minutes, right? That's another concern that we have. Do they just go back to what's familiar? So again, no problem with Buffalo too. I just think the ownership is a little bit high. I think, if you're single entering in either of the big contests on DK tonight, or, 3-maxing or something, I think there's definitely reason to fade them. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I'm running through like a preliminary crunch here, just finishing up. Like I don't have a ton of, I thought I was going to have more of that second line, I guess is how I should put it. I have them circled on my sheet. It looks like they're getting a lot of ownership. But just based on what I'm ranking out for, these cheap like filler lines like this, I guess it's more of a mid-tier line, Tuck being 6,700. They're popular, and you pair them with like the other popular lines of the night. I'm just not going to get to it that often. So that Buffalo 2 is my first read, but looking at the ownership here, like a near 4 total on a line with, what is that, like 4 or 5% total ownership on line 1. I know it's Middlestat, but maybe looking more towards Buffalo 1 here. If we're right on this ownership discrepancy, I think Tage will be maybe the highest owned player on Buffalo when it's all said and done. But I think we're on to the Buffalo 2 being a higher owned stack, with the wingers being on power play 1 on that second line. So I'm fine with Buffalo. Although I don't think I'm going to be super heavy on anything there based on this ownership.
Yeah, and this is the highest total of the night, and I just don't have much interest in using Buffalo in single entry. I think if you are considering Buffalo, I think I just have a hard time believing that Casey Middlestat, Tage Thompson, and JJ Peterka are going to be together in the third period of a close game if this game is close. Like, the things you have to think about, like Tage Thompson plays a lot with Jeff Skinner, and then Rasmus Dahlin's back at 8K. So, like, if you are going to play Buffalo, I think whether the ownership is high or not, you may get like a Tage Thompson, Jeff Skinner, Rasmus Dahlin 3-man at a little bit lower combined ownership, because not as many people will have that 3-man combo. Like, I don't mind that just because you're going to get fair correlation on the power play there. So, I just, sometimes these NHL coaches galaxy brain themselves, and, we'll get to other games with some weird line changes as well. I just feel like if the game gets off to a rough start, they're just going to go back to what they know. And you may just, I think it's like stacking Old Buffalo 1 could be, a way to get a different combo. Either you guys, Jake, I'll ask you first, because you crunch 150. Well, you crunch like 12,000 and then break it down. But do you have any Arizona coming up?
No, I have them crossed off right now, which, I don't cross off a ton of teams, but so kind of going back to Buffalo, Cliff, you mentioned if they get down early, if they get down 1-0, and maybe it's not looking good the first 10 minutes, talking about Buffalo, which is, it happens all the time with these huge favorites in NHL DFS. If you're new, it's highly variant. Like, if that happens, your Buffalo stacks are dead. That happens all the time with Arizona, and they suck, and we don't have a lot of data on their line. So it's just kind of a mess on an 11-game slate, 22 teams. Like, I think I'm out on Arizona, the forwards. I will say I don't do this line of construction a lot, but, if you have one-off forwards, I know our buddy Saul Goodman's watching, trying to get me kicked off the show already, and rightfully so. Clayton Keller, one-off, 4,600. That's a pretty good price for, this is probably one of the higher road totals that Arizona's going to have all season. You just never know where the scoring is going to come from, and their beats don't give you a lot of information. So a lot of factors just pointing me to being out on Arizona pretty much entirely.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Cliffy is also out on Arizona.
I was going to say you can probably just skip me.
Yeah.
I'm probably the same way. Until Nick Schmaltz comes back, I have a real hard time stacking anything on Arizona.
Yeah, so let's move to the blue line here. On the Yote side, there just isn't much there. I guess, if you want a contrarian power play quarterback, you could play JJ Moser or Shane Gostisbehere. They're just a little bit pricey for the possibility of them not scoring. You know what I mean? On the Buffalo side, Rasmus Dahlin 8K is back. The price is justified. He is coming off either an illness or a minor injury, but when he was out, Owen Power played a ton of minutes. He's back. I kind of worry a little bit about Owen Power's minutes, but 3,200 is a fair price. What are you seeing, Cliffy?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to mention JJ Moser because he had been playing a lot more minutes of late, like most on the Arizona blue line. But man, 4,500 on DK, 5,200 on FanDuel. That just feels like a lot to pay for, the non-Shane Gostisbehere defenseman on the Arizona blue line. You really need more than just a couple shots and a block bonus or something to get the value. So there really isn't a lot I like for defensemen in this game, actually. I think Owen Power's fine just because of the high total. Just be aware that he's not really shooting or blocking a lot of shots. You're really relying on him on getting goals and assists. So, if he stays off the score sheet, that could just be a bagel in your lineup, even in such a, what is such a good spot for the Sabres.
Yeah. I mean, Jake doesn't really know his defenseman because he just plays everyone, right? Am I right, Jake?
Yeah. I think Power's an interesting one just because I do doing the projections on the site today. I do most days. I don't really know how to project him. He has played well when he's gotten the minutes. I think I have him for about 20 minutes. So if he's there, even on secondary power play time, 3,200, that's fine as a one-off. But yeah, I think we're good on this game.
Yep. So let's move on to the next one. We have the Vegas Golden Knights with a 3.2 total heading into Toronto. The Leafs have a 3.3 total. Confirmed Eric Kallgren for the Leafs, who actually looked pretty good on Sunday night against the Hurricanes. Logan Thompson probable for the Golden Knights. Now, the Leafs made some line changes, moving Kerfoot up to the top line with Matthews and Marner. That just screams horrible. Matthews and Marner have great numbers together, but Kerfoot drags down every line. Nicholas Robertson moving up to the second line with Tavares and Nylander. The good news about that line is Alex Kerfoot is not on it. Michael Bunting dropping down to the third line. Now on the Vegas side, that top line of Stevenson, Eichel, Stone has played very well recently. As Cliffy mentioned in our Discord, they've kind of had some soft scheduling recently. Now they're getting the Toronto third string goalie, but they're probably going to get the Matthews matchup with Kerfoot there. I don't know if I'll get to them 1 to 3. I kind of like both second lines more in this game. Jake, how are you breaking down this game?
Yeah, so we don't have a ton of data for Kerfoot, Matthews, and Marner. So I do want to hear what Cliffy has to say about them. I know he's not a big Kerfoot fan, but is he big enough? Is he going to drop that line off enough for them to make it where you don't want to play Matthews as much? Leafs power play here is fine. I think either of the top two lines, 5-on-5, are good. Do what you want with Kerfoot. If he's going to be 7, 8, 9%, throw in Nylander instead. We've got him projected, or Tavares projected at 2 and 1% ownership. If you look at our ownership projections, so I think Leafs power play is probably my favorite on the Leafs side. And then I can't really decide between Vegas 1 and Vegas 2. I guess since you don't have to play against Matthews, at least my read on the game is that Vegas 2 won't have to play against Matthews as much. We got it as Matthews versus Eichel for the most part, although the Leafs are a really hard match. Vegas 2 is probably my preferred stack on the Vegas side, but I do want to hear what Cliffy has to say.
Yeah. For anybody that's kind of new to the show, we always pretty much just kind of dump on Alex Kerfoot. Just, it doesn't really seem like he's bringing a ton to the lineup. Whether he's on the first line, whether he's on the second line, it doesn't really matter. The thing is like that Toronto top line is pretty dominant regardless of who's on their wing. Like, I was looking at their numbers without any of the other top 3 forwards, and that would be Tavares, Nylander, and Michael Bunting. Like, they're still controlling 60% of the expected goals, 2.7 expected goals for. But that's kind of the one thing is that I want to mention is that Kerfoot's not really that good offensively. He's better defensively than he is offensively. So I'm not sure how much he can help Toronto's top line, generate offense. They haven't really had that problem. The problem of generating offense this year is just finishing. Matthews, Marner, Tavares has been pretty good on the power play, but there are a lot of Toronto players just struggling, just actually finishing. Now, usually that's a small sample problem. We're still, only a month into the season. It should, work itself out. It's just, is it going to work itself out, with Kerfoot on the wing, seeing as he's a guy that, is primarily a defensive type of forward. The point about Vegas 1 that we mentioned in the Discord is that soft schedule that they played of late. They were at home to Toronto a while back. In the 6 games since, San Jose, Anaheim, Winnipeg, Washington, Ottawa, Montreal, like, there may not be a playoff team in there by the end of the season. And I think that might be skewing Vegas's line numbers to look, considerably better than what they're going to look like after, maybe the next 10 games or something like that. By the same token, that Vegas top line, I think, Eichel and Stone were good together last year as well. So I think, we'd still expect them to be very good together. It's just a matter of whether they can actually finish. I don't mind playing some Vegas 1 here tonight. I know going into that Matthews matchup isn't great, but their defensive numbers this season have been about league average, right? Like, typically they're a lot better than that, believe it or not. Some Leafs fans may not. But they've been about league average so far this season. And like, league average against this Vegas top line is probably not going to be good enough. So I think Vegas 1 is absolutely in consideration here tonight. If you want to save some money and drop down to Vegas 2, they've been playing extremely well. Also, Jonathan Marchessault still shooting a ton. Riley Smith, very good creating scoring chances for both himself and his line mates. But that Vegas top line has just been excellent. We talk about it every show Vegas has been on lately. Jack Eichel added like 3 minutes to his ice time once Mark Stone joined his line. So there's a big difference between playing 19 to 20 minutes and 16 to 17. The price kind of reflects that, but I just think it's not necessarily a terrible matchup the way this Toronto top line's playing defensively, at least so far this season. Maybe Kerfoot can help, but if he's not helping them offensively, it kind of offsets what he can do for them defensively, right? So I don't mind Vegas one here. I think they're perfectly fine to use. On the Toronto side, like I would probably just go right to their top line as well. Like I think I'd just use one or the other top line here tonight. If you want to drop down to the second line, I think that's fine as well. One of the problems is Vegas is one of the least penalized teams in the NHL this year, only 2.3 times shorthanded per game. That's over a full power play less per game that they're giving to the opponent than the league average. And John Tavares, a lot of his value this season has been derived from the power play. It hasn't been from his even strength play. So I think that's why I would kind of be out on the Toronto second line, and I'd be more in on what should be a much better 5-on-5 line in Toronto one of Matthews, Marner, and Kerfoot.
Before we get to the blue line, I see we have a $20 super chat from Clayton. Thank you very much. Says, won my first tournament Saturday night. Thanks a ton to you guys, the tools and Discord chat gang. Yeah, Cliffy and I have always talked about, and Jake have always talked about how important the Discord is. But again, you're the one clicking in the players, so congrats to you. That was an awesome lineup. And remember, Awesemo tools are always behind you. Into the blue line, not much really sticking out here. Like, I guess like Timothy Liljegren at min price is okay. Morgan Riley, if you're doing anything with the power play, but as Cliffy just mentioned, that power play, Vegas doesn't take too many penalties, but Morgan Riley at 5K, like that price is okay. Justin Hull, not too bad at 3,600 either. I'm just not super excited about anything on either of these blue lines. Jake, yeah, maybe some Pietrangelo, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, Pietrangelo would probably be more of a correlation play at that price. So maybe if you're using Fantasy Cruncher, you say, if I'm playing Pietrangelo, you have to play someone on the top power play for Vegas, just because if he gets there, it's probably, I mean, it might be through, a couple of goals, but it's probably through assists or maybe some power play success for the Knights, and he goes better with the top line. You can one-off him if you'd like, but there's so many good, expensive defensemen. We already talked about Rasmus Dahlin, who's been awesome this season. We'll talk about my boy a little bit later. So 6,900, a little bit expensive for a one-off. I like Shea Theodore for 5,400. His price hasn't really come up. He hasn't really had a ton of huge games, but he's a guy who always shoots pretty high individual Corsi for per 60. He's just one of my favorite guys, especially when he's not listed on the top power play. I think that keeps his ownership pretty low here.
Yeah. Anything to add, Cliffy?
Yeah, I don't think this is necessarily a game where I'm running out for my defenseman. One thing I noticed is the Vegas defensemen as a whole are shooting way, way less than they were last year. Last year, Vegas had 5 defensemen attempting at least 11 shots every 60 minutes. This year, they have none. We saw Toronto go through the same thing a couple years ago where their defensemen basically stopped shooting and started, looking for more passes, deferring to the forwards. So one thing I worry about with somebody like Alex Pietrangelo, who really kind of thrives on peripherals, is really getting enough shots as a floor. And the prices aren't that cheap here. So honestly, unless I'm correlating with a line like Riley with Toronto 1 or Theodore with Vegas or something like that, I think I'm probably looking elsewhere for my blue liners.
Fair enough. So let's move on to the next game. It is our first circus of the night. We have the Vancouver Canucks with a 3.3 total heading into Ottawa. The Senators have a 3.5 total. Spencer Martin for the Canucks. Cam Talbot for the Senators. Brock Besser is back tonight. He is going to go onto the top line with Tanner Pearson and JT Miller. Second line remains the same as with Elias Pettersson, Andrei Kuzmenko, and Ilya Mikheyev. That drops Bo Horvat to the third line with Connor Garland and Vasily Podkolzin. On the Senators side, the Shane Pinto top line experiment has ended. The top line is now Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, Claude Giroux. Second line, Alex Brinkat, Derek Brassard, Drake Batherson. Now, Ottawa's top 2 lines are getting similar ownership here. Vancouver, really, that Pettersson line is the only one receiving ownership, and they're getting close to double digits here. But they are easily their best line. 5-on-5. Now, going back to last year, JT Miller, Brock Besser, Tanner Pearson had some good numbers together. Now, this is a 3-wing line on DraftKings, which could be a bit tricky. Cliffy, are you still going back to Pettersson here? Or are you going to take a couple stabs on the Besser line?
I think it would be going back to Pettersson. Like the don't get me wrong, the ownership is an issue. Seeing them, float around 10% on DraftKings. The problem is for me is Vancouver. We talk about it. I don't think we talked about it that much this year, but we certainly did last year. They're power play reliant for their production, like especially somebody like JT Miller. They really need the power play for their upside. And Brock Besser's back, but I'm not sure he's going to be back on the top power play unit. Kuzmenko has looked really good for Vancouver on that top unit. He's starting to finish, which was a problem, through the team's first 6 or 7 games of the season. So that's why I don't mind Miller, Besser, and Pearson, especially where they're relatively cheap price. I think you can kind of just leave off Pearson if you want. Where the prices are fine, I think they're okay to use, especially if you're going to be going in to that matchup against Ottawa, because Ottawa sends out the Shane Pinto line, their third line, quite often against top competition. And they haven't really been great this year, underwater by expected goal share. So I don't mind going to Miller and Besser as like a 2-man or something like that, but it would be Pettersson, Kuzmenko, Mikheyev. I know they have to try different things, but I can't imagine the solution is Derek Brassard as your second line center in the year 2022. He is shooting a lot, but his defensive numbers do not look good at all. And DeBrincat is not really a great defensive winger anyway. So, it would be Pettersson, Kuzmenko, Mikheyev that I like the best on the Vancouver side. You can leave off Mikheyev if you just want a power play stack or something for Vancouver. But what I like most in this game is that Stützle, Tkachuk, Giroux line. I wrote up Brady Tkachuk in the Power Plays article over on Stokastic.com, free to read. So head on over to Stokastic, the NHL section. There should be an article there covering some DFS picks for both DraftKings and FanDuel today. I wrote that going back to March of last year, which is about when Stützle and Tkachuk started playing a bit more together. They have 160 minutes together, generating 3.8 expected goals and 4.8 actual goals per 60 minutes. And their numbers are pretty similar with and without Drake Batherson. So Drake Batherson's actually been shooting a lot this year, which has helped his numbers and the line's numbers, especially Tkachuk's assist totals. I think he has 11 assists or something already this season. It's just like bonkers. He's definitely not a guy that usually racks up that many helpers. But I can't imagine Claude Giroux is going to hurt them at all. And the way Ottawa runs their lines is that Stützle, Tkachuk, Giroux line is going to see a lot of third and fourth line ice time against Vancouver. And they're going to start, see those second and third pairs quite a bit. So Ottawa is actually one of my favorite lines on the night, especially where Vancouver's penalty kill has looked pretty bad. I know the goaltending has a lot to do with it. The penalty kill save percentage for Vancouver this year is .711, which feels almost unfathomable for a
always open.
That's a good joke for a month of on the penalty kill, but until they start showing that they can improve from that, I definitely want to get some pieces against the Vancouver penalty kill. So it's Stützle, Tkachuk, Giroux that I like best. And one final thing I noted is that Tkachuk has started to play both power play units, kind of like Alex Ovechkin does in Washington, Connor McDavid does in Edmonton. So even though Giroux does get secondary power play minutes, Tkachuk correlates with both of them on the power play, which is nice.
Yeah, and I would imagine maybe, Jake, you might have some of that JT Besser Pearson line. How do you account for 3 wings there? Is that going to deter you at all?
Yeah, that kind of makes me want to try to force them in somewhere. What you could do with that is you just go. You're not going to come up with them organically if you're running 3 threes, because I don't think we have any double center even strength lines. So you're going to have to include power plays on your other stack. You can lock them in. What I'll probably do is just set aside a few lineups, lock them in, see what they pair well with. You've got some double center situations that look good. You can go with the Rangers guys, Zibanejad, Trocheck, both centers, and then take another power play one winger. Same thing with Edmonton. So, I mean, there's ways you can do it, but we're showing really low ownership. That was the line that I was going to point out. I mean, I love the Kuzmenko, Pettersson, Mikheyev line as well, but that's kind of where the ownership's at. So if you can get a 1% line that has a good sample, guys that will all get power play time in some fashion, even if Besser's not on the top unit, it's going to be on one of them. I mean, that line has a good sample going back to last season. So if Besser's healthy, 3.3 total at 1%, I'm in on that, especially if it's the triple winger situation.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll add, I know Bo Horvat's on the third line here, and he's 7,400. But going back to the end of last season, only 2 players in the NHL, I think it was I forget what month of last year, but only 2 players have scored more goals than him in that time span, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah. And
the Senators are not world beaters defensively. They have their own issues on the PK. I think, I don't want to say just run out and one off a third line $7,400 player, but I think getting Bo Horvat at very low ownership here tonight is a nice sneaky option. But let's move on to the blue lines here. I think for me it's going to be the 3 power play quarterbacks, Quinn Hughes for the Canucks, and then Tomas Chabot is the expensive one for the Senators, and Jake Sanderson is the punt at 3,100 on DraftKings, still on power play 1 for the Sens. Anyone else interesting you, Jake?
No, it's a power play 1, guys. I think on both sides. Let me check to see if I got to any Hamonic. Sometimes he's a guy that comes up just because of his block rate, but I'm not seeing him in any of my lineups on FC. So he'd be fine for a blocks bonus guy. I think this game is going to be high paced, but there's probably some options that are equally as good for 3K, and I never really go all in on a 3K defenseman.
Yeah. Cliffy?
Usually people new to the show, usually when I trash somebody, they go on to have a pretty big fantasy night. So take this with a grain of salt. I'm wondering if people are going to play Jacob Bernard Docker on the top pair with Thomas Chabot for Ottawa. He's supposed to be one of their top prospects, but he's really a defense-first defenseman. He has 10 points in 66 AHL games. He's averaging 1 shot per game this season. He was 1.1 shots per game last season. Unless he blocks a ton of shots, I don't know if he's going to really do a lot in fantasy. So I wouldn't get sucked in by him playing on the top pair, quote unquote, for Ottawa. I think the guy most interesting to me might be Ethan Bear. He's a little bit expensive on DK at 3,500, but 3,500 on FanDuel. He's been playing 20 plus minutes since he got to Vancouver. So if you need a punt type defenseman, super punt defenseman on FanDuel, I don't mind Bear.
Yeah, I like Bear as well, but the problem was he was min price on DraftKings for the first few games. Now he's up to 3,500, and for 3,500, you probably can. I'd rather just play Sanderson for 400 less.
Fair enough.
Anyway, as we mentioned at the top of the show, we are sponsored by BetMGM, and you can get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to $1,000 risk-free bet when you sign up. Make a deposit and make your first paid wager at MGM. How do you do that? I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you. You have to create a free Stokastic membership using the form below. Most of you guys probably have a Stokastic membership already. So if you do, you just log in on Stokastic.com. Then you click the large BetMGM button that appears. It looks like the Lannister flag. You can't miss it. Then complete the necessary steps with BetMGM. And then you create a BetMGM sportsbook account, which is very easy. You can deposit at least $10, right? You get $1,000 risk-free bet if you deposit and bet the $1,000. You can do it for as low as $10. Then you make your first paid bet. It has to be money line or a prop bet, which is easy. And once your bet settles, you qualify for the Stokastic subscription, and you get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum for as low as $10. That is easily one of the best deals I've ever read, if not the best deal I've ever read on this channel. There are a lot of you in this chat. I would imagine, BetMGM's not available in all 50 states, but if you are in a state that it is available, I urge you to do this because you can get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum for a $10 bet. And if you lose the bet, BetMGM will give you the $10 back. So you're basically getting 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum for free. So sign up. We'll get into that. Bet the big dog plus money prop of the night. Kyle Connor over 3.5 shots. Do that. Sign up. Win for everybody. So let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Calgary Flames with a 3.1 total heading into New Jersey. The Devils have a 3.6 total. Calgary played last night. They lost to the Islanders in Long Island. The drive from Long Island to New Jersey isn't very long, but it sucks. Dan Vladash probably in net for the Flames. Vitek Vanacek probably in net for the Devils as Mackenzie Blackwood is out long term. You know, the Flames played last night. They lost. They had a lot of shots on goal, didn't convert. They actually did score 3 on Ilya Sorokin, which is a nice feat. I would imagine they'll go with the same lines here tonight. On the Devils side, looks like Tatar, Hischier, Zetterlund, Haula, Hughes, Bratt, and then Sharangovich, Mercer, Bachquist. I think the only line that really piques my interest here is the Hughes-Bratt combo here. If you want to go back to Flames 1 and MME, that is fine. Cliffy, do you have any interest in Hischier, or are you just going back to Hughes-Bratt here?
I do have some interest in Hischier, and it's for this reason, is that Fabian Zetterlund looks like he may have jumped to the top power play unit. He was mixing in on the power play in practice in place of Nathan Bastian. And I think he got some power play time there in their last game as well. So, you know, were you able to get 2 out of 3 guys on a power play unit, and the Flames are the 3rd most penalized team in hockey, I think there's definitely reason to play Hischier in Zetterlund at the very least on that New Jersey top line. But the thing is like both New Jersey 1 and New Jersey 2, at least by our top stacks, are coming in a little bit over-owned, like not a lot, definitely not anywhere near enough to get me away from them. So, considering that, I would probably just play the Hughes-Bratt Haula line, seeing as that we do have a bigger sample, at least of Hughes and Bratt playing together. They're coming in with almost no ownership on FanDuel either because the prices are a little bit more expensive. But Hughes was a guy that I wrote up in the Power Plays article today as well, free to read over on Stokastic.com. That trio has been very, very good for New Jersey so far this season. Jack Hughes, he's at a point per game, which is good. He's also at 4.4 shots per game, I believe, as his shot rate at 5-on-5 and on the power play have both increased. The problem is that he's shooting 5% at 5-on-5. Like once his percentages turn around, he'll be well over a point per game player. And Jesper Bratt has been excellent as well. What's drawing me to that line more than anything is the way New Jersey runs their lines when they're at home. They'll send out the Hischier line out against Lindholm and Toffoli and Huberdeau. They've been pretty snake bit offensively this year, but they've also been pretty good defensively, which is a hallmark of this Flames team, everywhere except the second line, where Kadri, Mangiapane, Huberdeau, 3 expected goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That's well below average. I believe they're at about 3.7. 2.7 goals against, because the goaltending has actually been decent behind them. But they are trading a lot of chances. And if you're going to trade chances with Hughes and Bratt, a line that's generating well over 3 goals per 60 minutes going back to last year in a huge sample, I'll take my chances with the home team that's not playing a back-to-back on the road. So Hughes, Bratt, throw in Haula if you want, because he's pretty cheap and he's actually shooting a fair bit at 5-on-5. I mean, this line just generates so many shots that he's got to shoot eventually. So I think there are cases to be made for both the top New Jersey lines. But where I'm getting such a better in-game matchup against the Calgary second line, I think I would take Hughes, Bratt, and Haula. What do you think about the matchup, Jake?
I was going to ask you what you thought about Haula, just as like a real hockey guy. with Hughes and Brad, because I mean, we love Hughes and Brad. We talk about them in Discord all the time. You were early on them, early on Hughes specifically last year in this combo. The numbers with Holla in a smallish sample are good, but not like lighting the world on fire. But if they're going to get that Kadri, Dubé, Mangiapane line, even half the time they're out on the ice, I think that's a great matchup for them. So I love them. It sounds like you're okay with including Holla in the stack for 3,100, shooting maybe a little bit more than what he has for his career in more of a defensive role when he's been with Boston and Vegas and Minnesota at times in years past. So I really like it. I do like some NJ1 as well. I think I'm kind of out on the Flames tonight, even though it's a 3.1 total. If I was to go to a line significantly, it would be that Kadri line. Just hope for a high-paced matchup back and forth, because that's kind of what they've done all season. But yeah, New Jersey for me here.
Yeah, I'm not huge on stacking teams back to back on the road, which the Flames are. Ownership on that top line's okay. Like, Huberdeau has not really got accustomed to playing for the Flames yet. It seems like, as Cliffy said, they're a little bit snake bit, but like 2-3%, if you're 150ing, I think you can take a stab or two there. It's not like the Devils goaltending has been better of late, but it's still not great. And if Lindholm, Toffoli, Huberdeau get some positive shooting regression here with the Devils goaltending, it could be a high scoring night, and the total reflects that. 3.1 on the road back to back is a significant total, but we'll see.
The one thing I will say about Calgary one is I think we've been undershooting their ownership a little bit because they projected really well in other slates. Tonight it looks like they're right around like the 2x value, just eyeballing it here on the lineup builder, and that's going to be good enough to become a filler stack. So they may be a little bit more popular than what we're showing right now. That'd just be something to look out for, because I've found myself manually upping my ownership projection for them, starting with our ownership, just to make sure I'm accounting for them as a popular filler when I'm ranking out my lineups.
For sure. Good thing to note there. Moving to the blue line, I think the guy that sticks out on the Flame side is Noah Hannafin, especially if Chris Tanev is still out again. Hannafin's been playing big minutes. He's been getting peripherals. He is getting a bit more expensive now, 4,200. I still think he's fine there. On the Devils side, if you're not using Dougie Hamilton in the power play role, I think the two guys for me would be Ryan Graves, John Marino. Anything else that interests you, Cliffy?
I will mention Mackenzie Weegar. Like, I think him and Hannafin are coming in with quite a bit of ownership, which kind of surprises me, but I guess the prices are fine. But Weegar has been playing a lot more with Chris Tanev out of the lineup, and that was Weegar's problem through the team's first 9 games or whatever it was. They had a pretty full blue line, and his ice time had declined significantly since coming over from Florida. But now that Chris Tanev is out, they're playing Weegar a lot more. So even if he is 9-10%, I think he's fine in that mid-range, in that mid-range pricing. So he's probably the guy I would look to in this game. On Calgary side, on the New Jersey side, it's probably Ryan Graves. Seems like I'm playing him every slate that he's out, but when he gets minutes, he can put up good peripherals, and he's still not expensive, and he's playing 21 plus minutes over his last 5 games. So don't mind Graves on the Devils side.
I like the Weegar call a lot. I'm with that for sure. That's another one that's well over a 2x value right now. So as a mid-tier defenseman, he's not power play 1, but he's one of my favorite one-offs in that range on DK.
Yeah, so let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the New York Islanders with a 2.6 total heading into the Garden. My New York Rangers have a 3.4 total. Islanders are back-to-back on the road. Sorokin started last night, which was a bit surprising because Sorokin shut out the Rangers the last time he faced them. It's probably going to be Semyon Varlamov for the Islanders, Igor Shesterkin for the Rangers. Gerard Gallant has gone full Galaxy brain. The Rangers have new lines. It is Artemi Panarin with Mika Zibanejad and Capo Kakko. Second line of Jimmy Vesey, Vincent Trocheck, and Alexis Lafreniere. Moving Chris Kreider down to the third line with Philip Hedl and Vitaly Kravtsov. Would imagine it's going to be the same lines for the Islanders tonight. Now, historically, Panarin and Zibanejad have not played great together 5-on-5. They do play good together on the power play. Islanders don't take too many penalties. So, Jake, how are you handling these Rangers' new lines tonight?
Yeah, these are a total mess. I don't know what your team is up to here, Josh. Is their record bad? I guess as DFS players, I don't pay attention to teams' records, right? I'm just looking at
they have a good record, and like they've played it in the afternoon the past 2 Sundays or whatever, and they've looked awful. And then Gallant just like blows everything up.
Yeah, so I mean, these lines are kind of tough. Zibanejad, Panarin, Kakko. I think looks like to me the most complete stack. But if they're going this rogue with the line combos, this is another one of those situations where Islanders are a decent defensive team, or at least they have been in the past. I don't know about this season. If they go up 1-0 after the first period, your stack might be completely dead. Maybe they go back to Zibanejad, Kreider, and Kakko. That would be a line I'd be really interested in playing tonight. But it's just they're not going to start out that way, so I can't really stack them like that unless you're just going full power play stack. Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider. Don't hate that. Second line doesn't interest me much as a full stack. Third line doesn't interest me much as a full stack. And then on the Islanders side, these lines aren't even confirmed. They didn't skate this morning unless the coach said something about, we're going with what we went with in the end of the third period last night. These are just guesses that we're going with. So Lee, Nelson, and Barzal. There's your double center line. If it even is that at warmups, I could see them going back to Barzal, Bailey, and Wahlstrom again. I could see Wahlstrom getting healthy scratched. I could see Josh Bailey getting healthy. Like, you just don't know what it's going to look like. Luckily, this game is a 7 Eastern start time when the slate locks. And you guys will be on live before lock tonight to kind of break it down for people. So if you're playing any Islanders tonight, you should tune in if you don't want to grind the Twitter news yourself, because Cliffy and Josh will be live to kind of break down any last minute line situations or guys that get scratched unexpectedly. I will be tuning in for sure to see if I have any Islanders. I'm not super interested in them right now. It would just be spots where I need to get more stacks of Tampa Bay or, whatever your top team is tonight. Maybe Seattle, Wenberg. You need to get more Wenberg. You play some Islander stacks. I don't know. But yeah, this game is just kind of a mess for a pretty decent total.
Yeah, and as Jake mentioned, we are on live before lock today at 6. But if we don't get a move on, this show is going to bleed right into live before lock. But Cliffy, if the top line for the Islanders is Lee, Nelson, Barzal, do you have any interest in that, despite them going into Igor?
Not really. One thing I mentioned is Anders Lee's shot rate has really declined at 5-on-5, 5-on-5 and the power play or the power play. I forget which it is. So far this season, like, he just hasn't looked like the same player since he had his knee surgery. I think it was back in the spring of 2021. Matt Barzal still hasn't scored this year. Like, he's just playmaking, which is kind of a concern for upside in DFS, especially when you're facing Igor Shesterkin. Honestly, I think what I like the most out of this game is a two-man of Hedl and Kreider. I know that feels weird to say, but all of Kreider's problem this year is almost all shooting percentage related, right? Like, I think that's why you're seeing the mix up of the lines here is, Mika Zibanejad 0 goals at 5-on-5. I think Chris Kreider shooting like 8%, which is less than half of what he shot in the 3 years average before that. And I think they kind of want to get Hedl going as well. He was injured. He looked good at the start of the year, then got injured. Maybe he has some nagging injuries, but Hedl and Kreider have played pretty well together in a small-ish sample going back a couple of years. 3.5 expected goals generated, 4.1 actual goals. Assuming the Islanders start the game the way they finished last night, they're going to be going into a line of Anthony Beauvillier, Josh Bailey, and Oliver Wahlstrom, possibly. Ooh. Like, even if Wahlstrom's not there, even if they move somebody like Palmieri or something down that line. It doesn't look very good to me. Like going against whatever third line for the Islanders that's going to be, it seems pretty tantalizing. Like you guys said, not really a great power play spot. Islanders have an excellent penalty kill. Don't take very many penalties either, well below league average in that regard. So I don't think you have to focus on Zibanejad and Panarin and Fox here tonight. I think you kind of have to look more at the 5-on-5 matchup, especially with Ilya Sorokin not starting. Like going down to Varlamov is a huge downgrade in net, and the Islanders aren't really a great defensive team. So you get middle of the roster matchups for what is a pretty good duo in Hedl and Kreider. I really don't mind that 2-man here tonight.
Yeah, I kind of like them too. I don't like these lines, but if I'm going to play any Rangers, I'm hoping they stay together for the whole game. Moving to the blue line, not too much interest for me on the Islanders side. Cliffy, on the Rangers side, you just said you're not prioritizing Fox. Does that mean you're prioritizing Jacob Trouba here?
I'm just not really prioritizing a lot of defensemen in this game period. Like I think Fox, his price on FanDuel is pretty good. I think it's in the low 6s. So I really, I don't mind him on FanDuel at that price. This isn't really a game where I feel like you have to run out and play any of the defensemen that are playing. I think the one guy that would be kind of an interest on the Rangers side, he's getting expensive, but it'd be Keandre Miller. Just we kind of have to see how the Rangers lineup shakes out, because Ryan Lindgren may not play tonight. And if he doesn't play, that could be a lot more minutes for Miller. So we'll have to see what happens there at warm-up. The only guy that's really sticking out to me on DraftKings is Adam Pelech. Played 23 minutes last night. Can definitely get the block bonus on DK. Not super expensive at 3,200. So he's probably one of the few defensemen that I'm targeting out of this game. Anything to add, Jake?
Pulak, 4,100. I always get a decent amount of him, but it's not a play that I'm in love with. It's 2% ownership right now. I think that's fair for him in this spot.
Yep. So let's before we move on to the next game, we have a $1.99 super chat from M Haas 17, our boy Matty Nihas. Do I need to say it? That's what he said, which means he's talking about his Blues. So let's get to his Blues. The St. Louis Blues have a 3.0 total heading into Philadelphia. The Flyers have a 2.9 total. The Blues played last night. They actually didn't look too bad for most of the game. Just kind of got out of hand at the end there. So it's probably going to be Tomas Greiss for the Blues and Carter Hart, who has been unstoppable to start this season for the Flyers. He's 7,300. He's going to be a popular target here. Jake, I'm going to start with you. I see the top line of the Flyers coming in around 9% right now, and I know they play 20 minutes a night. They're on the ice for a ton of minutes here, and I know the Blues have had their issues. Greiss in net tonight, which, I don't know. That's probably not even a downgrade from Binnington. I've been on the Binnington hate train for a long, long time, but my question to you is, I'm not thrilled about the Flyers top line here, but they are getting a back-to-back team on the road. The ownership might be scaring me away a little bit. What are you doing with the Flyers top line?
Yeah, that is pretty popular for a bad team with a 2.9 total at home. I know they account for a lot of that scoring. If you project this, if you simulate this game, like what the top stack tool does thousands of times. So I understand, they're good value or they're okay value and they're at home. But I'm not going to get to 8 or 9% of Philadelphia one if they stick around there for ownership. Maybe be half of that. Maybe I end up Xing them out. I'm not exactly sure, but they're really just a filler for me. If I get to them a couple times out of my 100 or 150 lineups, that's fine. I really like the St. Louis side, and specifically St. Louis 2. And I see you guys both nodding. So the Buchnevich, Thomas, Tarasenko line, fully correlated, top power play. This is one of those lines where we're still early in the season. We have a good sample of them being good. This season, we have a good sample of them being good. Last season, yes, it is a road back-to-back. On the road against Boston is a little bit different than on the road against Philadelphia. Carter Hart is, he's overdue for a bad game. He's not going to keep it up to this extent. But if he does have a bad game, this one I think could get pretty ugly if this St. Louis 2 line is cooking. So they're going to come up from that 3% that we have them at right now. I'm going to guess they're like 6 or 7 by the time we get to lock. But yeah, I'm all over St. Louis 2 here.
Yeah, and I'll get to Cliff in a second. I see everyone just flaming Jake for doing the show in his closet. It's not a closet. I know he upgraded to a mini fridge in there, and we all know that there is a ton of White Claws in there. So let's ease up on the Jake hate with the mini fridge. He's got beverages.
There's White Claws, there's sparkling waters. I think I got some Gatorades in there. One of these days, maybe next time I come on the show, we can do a little fridge reveal, and you can see what's in there. Yeah. Probably some light beers or something.
The next time you come on your show, I'll probably have an AARP card, but that is for another time. Let's get to Cliffy here. You said, I saw Cliffy nodding his head. He also likes St. Louis too. Is that your favorite line from this game?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with that St. Louis second line so far this year has just been a little bit of injury, right? Pavel Buchnevich has missed about half the year so far. Robert Thomas has got a couple games down on the third line, I think, because their third line kept getting caved in night after night. They tried spreading everything out. That didn't work. So they're going to be going into, I mean, it doesn't really matter which Flyers line they're going into. Like, I know we like to talk about line matching, and it does matter a little bit, but I don't think it really matters whether you match up against Joel Farabee and Wade Allison or Owen Tippett and Travis Konechny. Like, let's be real honest about that. I think Scott Laughton's a decent defensive center, but he's not good enough to make up for let's say, the lacking defensively wingers that he has. And that St. Louis second line, we saw them be absolutely dynamic last year. They've scored like over 5 goals per 60 minutes, generating north of 3 expected goals per 60 minutes. They are really, really good. We've seen them come in with much higher prices than what they have as well. And Jake kind of mentioned it, our top stacks tool, they're coming in at 2 to 3% ownership over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, a lot higher, where the price, they're really cheap on FanDuel here tonight, but at least on DraftKings, where people are going to have to make a decision about a lot of those mid-priced lines. I think this is a spot to go to against a really bad Flyers top 6, really bad defensively Flyers top 6. The one thing that bothers me, St. Louis doesn't draw a lot of power plays. Like, you'd want to take advantage of this Flyers penalty kill. They don't draw very many. So, I probably won't go ham on them here tonight, but considering the ownership here, considering what we've seen them do last year, even this year, like 2.9 goals for per 60 minutes isn't bad. I think that's above league average. It's just not what we saw from them last year. All it takes is one game and they're right back to where they were. I do like St. Louis too here. Just to touch on the Flyers real quick, St. Louis is taking the fewest penalties of any team in the league, only 2.3 times shorthanded per game. If the Flyers only get a couple power play opportunities here, I know the St. Louis penalty kill isn't great, but I think that's another reason to kind of stay away from what could be a pretty heavily owned Flyers top line.
Yeah, I just, it's always the question of the Carter Hart situation. I do believe Carter Hart is a very good goalie. Do I believe he's going to continue saving everything in his path the whole season? No. And I think this is a good spot to take that bet on St. Louis too, because they're back to back on the road. Carter Hart's going to be popular. That's not really how leverage works in, NHL DFS, but I don't mind taking shots on St. Louis too here. So let's move to the blue line here. The good news is, if you're using St. Louis too, Torrey Krug is the power play quarterback at 4,200. Justin Falk is running the other unit, and he's 7,200, which is a scene. I am never going to play Justin Falk at 7,200. I think he's fine in a nutshell, but back-to-back on the road, 7,200 is going to be a big no for me. On the Flyers side, like you said, the Blues don't take many penalties, so Tony D, probably not the guy for me. It would probably be Ivan Provorov or Travis Sanheim. Anything else piquing your interest there, Mr. Cliffy?
No, Sanheim was kind of the only punty type player. I will mention Rasmus Ristolainen. he's a guy that can block a lot of shots. He's been god awful this year. But min price on DraftKings, if you need a super punt, I think risk the line is fine. But I think I'd almost try to find another $700 to play Travis Sanheim.
Anything to add to that, Jake?
No, all good. Krug as an add-on. Wouldn't play him as a one-off.
Thank you, Jake. College basketball is back, and we have you covered. With Matt Gajewski's, I hope I said that right. It is very hard to say that, but I think I did. Industry-leading college basketball DFS package, and we've got a deal to kick the season off. It's just $1 for your first week of college basketball DFS with promo code CBB is back. That's a much better promo code than the last one, just saying. Or click the link in the description. Click the description of the show. You see the link. That's a saving of over 90% of the regular weekly price for college basketball. And included, you get projected fantasy points for every slate, player usage data, and expert Discord chat. I will say Matt Gajewski, one of the sharper employees we have here. I watch his Sunday morning NFL shows, but college basketball, he is excellent as well. So let's move on to the next game of the night. This is a sneaky festival. We have the Montreal Canadiens with a 2.7 total heading into Detroit. The Red Wings have a 3.3 total. Jake Allen against Ville Husso. Now, Red Wings going with Pia Suter, Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, second line of Dominic Kubalik, Andrew Kopp, David Perron. On the Canadian side, it looks like it is the top line is at least status quo, and that is the important one for DFS. Cliffy, I'm going to start with you. I see almost no ownership on the Canadiens top line here, and since Kirby Dach has moved up to that top line, they've played very well together, and Kirby Dach has not looked like a fish out of water offensively either. I honestly think, like, looking at the ownership on the Detroit second line, I honestly think that Montreal 1 is my favorite play in this game.
Yeah, I hate saying it as a Montreal fan, but I do like the Montreal top line here tonight. I will say not so much on FanDuel. They're over 22,000 on FanDuel, I believe. They're more expensive than the Toronto top line tonight, which is just absolutely wild to me. But just talking about the Montreal top line, yeah, they have been better with Kirby Dach. Especially defensively. The problem with the Montreal top line at times is they really get hemmed in their zone because they aren't, Suzuki and Caulfield aren't very good defensively, at least not together. And Kirby Dach's kind of helped remedy that. So, the less time you spend in your zone, the more time you're going to be spending in the offensive zone. They've definitely been shooting way too hot, 7.5 goals per 60 minutes in their time together. Like, that's way too high. But Suzuki's, sometimes up and down in ice time, but he's been 20 plus minutes in 3 straight. These guys all play the same power play together. Not that the Montreal power play is necessarily great either. But more than anything, they're going to get that Detroit second line with Andrew Kopp and David Perron. And that line just hasn't been good defensively this year. Just Kopp and Perron together, around 3 expected goals against per 60 minutes. That's pretty bad defensively. Kopp and Kubalik have similarly bad defensive numbers, so I can't imagine that line as a trio is going to be very good. So that's a pretty plus matchup for that Montreal top line, and where they're coming in with absolutely no ownership. Like, they might come in under 1% as a trio here tonight. I do like Montreal 1 the most out of this game. I think Detroit 1 is fine to play, but man, Pia Suter there just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Like, I really wish they had moved somebody like Perron or Kubalik up to the top line instead. Detroit's coming in with a lot of ownership, particularly that second line. So if you want to fade the ownership and go with a better leverage play, I think it's Montreal 1 here tonight. They're getting a little bit expensive, but I still think they're perfectly fine. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking at this ownership. I'm going to be on the Montreal side more relative to their ownership. Basically nothing on, the road team here. Detroit, the home team, 13%, I guess, in total percent ownership on Detroit too. So that's going to be a pass from me. There's no way I get to 15%. Like you said, Cliffy, they just haven't been good at generating. They've been poor defensively, and they're going to be chalk. So, or at least a popular filler, I think, at the very least. because of the 3.3 total. So I would go to Detroit 1 if I'm going to Detroit. I will throw out Montreal 2 as well. All similar situation. They don't all play in the top power play together. They play in the second unit. We don't love stacking second power play units, but they're going to be on the ice together the entire game. Hoffman, Dvorak, and Gallagher, and they're coming in at under 1% as well.
One thing I'll add is the Montreal penalty kill is abysmal. So if you want to go to Detroit 1 for the lower ownership compared to Detroit 2, you leave off Pia Suter, add in the Kubalik, add in the David Perron for some power play correlation, and just have at it there. You know, Montreal is going through it defensively. So I think, power play stack, doing some sort of Detroit power play stack is a nice way to get a bit different. Moving to the blue line, Moritz Seider back on the top power play unit for Detroit. He's garnering a boatload of ownership here, but for what he does at 5,100, I think he's fine. Outside of that, there just isn't much that I want to play on either side. Anyone else you want to play, Jake? Oh, sorry, taking a sip of your.
No, you're good. You're good. Seider. Is it Seider or Cedar? I can never remember.
Cedar, like the
Cedar.
wood.
Cedar. Okay. Yeah. So Cedar, 5,100. I like him as a one-off, a decent amount. I think he's going to be played in a lot of Detroit 1 and Detroit 2 stacks. You get two guys from the top power play on both of those lines. So whichever line you go with, people are going to just see the $5,100 guy with decent peripherals and want to throw him in there. So I like using him as a one-off. You hope he scores a goal or gets the combo meal, and maybe Detroit's top two lines stay quiet.
Cliffy, your boy Arbor, I forget his last name. It goes XH, and that's just a festival for me. You have any interest in him running the top power play unit at 2,800?
I think he only played 13 or 14 minutes last game. I actually found out it's pronounced Jack High, like Jack High almost. I will just go with it.
All right.
Montreal basically went to four defensemen when they brought back Joel Edmondson, and one of those four defensemen was not Jack High. So, I'd probably be going back to a Goulet or a Harris, but I'm going to be honest, I don't like the Montreal defenseman in this game. It's Cedar that I like a lot. More minutes now that he's back on the top power play. His peripherals are really, really good. I'll just also throw out Philip Hronik. He's seen a pretty big price drop on DK since being moved from the top power play unit. I think he makes a decent pivot away from Cedar, who could be 20% owned tonight, and Hronik will probably be in the low single digits.
Yeah, man, these three-man boxes are just so bad for my face. I have such a big head. Anyway, I'm like Heed from So I Married an Axe Murderer. Let's move on to the next one. Edmonton Oilers with a 2.9 total heading into Tampa Bay. The Lightning have a 3.7. I think this is the first time since I've been on the show that the Oilers have under a 3-point total. And this is the third season that I've been doing these shows. I honestly believe this is the first time the Edmonton total has been under 3, as long as, McDavid's healthy. This is an interesting game because Edmonton is back-to-back on the road. So it's probably going to be Jack Campbell against Andrei Vasilevsky. Both of these teams have issues on the penalty kill. Both of these teams have very good power play units. You'd almost never see Connor McDavid get low ownership here. Cliffy, I know they're back-to-back on the road with a semi-low total for them, but 4% Connor McDavid going up against, I know it's Vasilevsky, but their penalty kill hasn't been great. Do you have any interest on the Edmonton side here?
I mean, I have interest in both sides here, particularly the Tampa top line. I will start with Edmonton. Your point about the penalty kill is a good one. Tampa Bay, their expected goals against, it's near the bottom of the league. I think they're 29th. Now, the actual goals against are better, but still only in the middle of the league at about 7.5 goals against per 60 minutes, which isn't that great. They're above average by time shorthanded so far this season. So, Edmonton could end up drawing a decent amount of power plays here. Edmonton does draw an above average amount of power plays as it is. A few years ago, I was just talking DFS with another DFS player, and he told me basically anytime Connor McDavid is on the road, he's going to come in with lower ownership than he usually does. And he'll be in a good leverage spot here tonight and to always play him. just because he provides such good upside and such leverage on a slate this big. Like, it's going to be hard for me to get away from playing some sort of Edmonton power play stack. Now, obviously, the prices on these Edmonton guys have really, like Zach Hyman, 7,200. I never thought I'd live to see the day. So it is tough to fit in some of the Edmonton guys. Ryan McLeod got moved up to the top line with Connor McDavid and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins last night. So maybe there are cheap third wheels that we can use. But where it's such a large slate and there are, different ways, are different spots to go get low owned lines. I think taking a real hard look at an Edmonton power play stack is pretty important here, because you're right. There's really not a lot of ownership coming in on these players. McDavid looks to be at about 4% on our last ownership run. A lot of guys in the 1-2% range. Like, if you can get Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Evander Kane, these guys, these really high upside guys at 2-3%, even, on a road back-to-back, I think you have to take that chance. So I'm definitely going to be considering Edmonton power play. And on the other side, it's the Tampa top line. They're coming in with positive leverage as well in this game. They've been really, really good so far this year. 3.3 expected goals per 60 minutes, 3.9 actual goals. Kucherov often over 22 minutes a night. Point a little bit less, but still pretty heavy. And Edmonton's penalty kill is bad. Tampa draws a lot of power plays, the third most in the league, and the Oilers give up a lot of power plays as well. Second most time shorthanded. So Tampa won, actually one of my favorite lines on the entire slate. And honestly, I don't like game stacking on a slate this big. If there is a spot that I was going to game stack, it would be this one. There are expensive players, but there might be some cheap third wheels that we can fit in. So I really do like Tampa top line here as well.
Cliffy, what do you think these lines are going to stay the same? These Edmonton lines? I know they cycled in. So I was watching the game, and then I looked at Natural Stat Trick just to see what line combos they were going with. And they started out McDavid, Nugent-Hopkins, Puljujarvi for most of the game. And then, it was a close one. They were chasing. And I saw McDavid and Draisaitl out there with Devin Shore. I saw them out there with Ryan McLeod at one point. Is that a concern at all, or are you just relying on the power play here?
I would mostly rely on the power play. I think it could work out well as long as you leave if you do go like McDavid and McLeod, let's say, because McLeod played the last 3 or 4 shifts of the game with McDavid. Just make sure, obviously, that one of them is in the utility, because Puljujarvi and Fogle are both 2,500, the same price as Ryan McLeod on DK. So as long as they're in the utility and you have to make a swap, you're probably going to be able to do it. So I would just pay attention to your roster construction when playing them. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense, because I think Puljujarvi is kind of the way that if you wanted to get to a game stack with all these expensive pieces, he would be the guy. You stack him with McDavid and then Draisaitl or Evander Kane. So you're getting at least 2 guys on that top power play, and then 2 guys at even strength is how I like to do it if I'm doing some sort of broken Edmonton stack, because this could be one of those slates where we look back tomorrow morning and we're like, why didn't we play 5% owned Connor McDavid? It's not a 15-game slate, it's 11-game slate. So we've seen him in seemingly bad spots. And I think this is a pretty bad spot going up against that Tampa top line, or even that second line is a really tough 5-on-5 spot, but it's the best player in the world. He's got quality line mates. They've got an amazing power play and low ownership. So I agree. The power play stack or mixing in Puljujarvi in there and then watching the line combos at warmups and just going with whatever it is, whether it's McLeod or Puljujarvi. I guess they'll start skating at around 7:00 Eastern. Tampa 1, agreed. One of my favorite stacks on the slate. I will say, I don't love game stacks. I don't love forcing in game stacks. If I get to it naturally and it fits, that's fine. But I probably won't have really any game stacks tonight. But that's just a personal preference.
Yeah, Tampa 1 for me as well. I was a bit surprised to see how high Tampa 2 ownership was here with their broken power play correlation and, Nick Paul not on the power play at all. I got burned the other night. I used Stamkos instead of Hagel and Hagel had a 3-point night, but, I think you're kind of priced out of that with Stamkos being 8K now and Kucherov in the 8Ks as well. So I think just going full Tampa 1 is probably the best option from this game. But yeah, it always worries me when Connor McDavid is coming in a low ownership because, like you just said, tomorrow morning we're going to wake up and go, we're all idiots after he had like a 5-point night.
Yep.
On the blue line here, Victor Hedman, 7,100, running the top power play unit is the guy for me. Tyson Barrie runs the Edmonton power play. I'm not a huge fan of using him. There just isn't much on the Edmonton side that I'd want to play, maybe like a Cody Ceci punt or an Evan Bouchard. Like Nurse is fine, but his minutes have been a bit wonky. Like I want to see Nurse around 27 minutes. He's been playing like 22 to 24 at times, which still is a lot, but it's a bit worrisome. Jake, anyone else really besides Hedman?
No, I think it's just Hedman for me. I mean, if you want to play someone that's not Tyson Barrie, Bouchard is $100 more. So that would be a guy who he actually shoots. He's not just reliant on getting power play assists like Tyson Barrie. He's going to probably play more minutes than Tyson Barrie. So that would be the easy pivot if you don't want a bad player that's just in a good situation like Tyson Barrie. Still a bad player. I can't remember who coined that phrase, but I really like it. I was have to remind myself.
Who was it?
I can't remember who it was, but I always have to remind myself when I'm clicking in these dusty forwards like that.
Cliffy, anything to add for defenseman?
No, I'll just mention even with Hedman back, Mikhail Sergachev has still been playing 24 minutes. I know his price on DK is still super expensive, so it could be a pass, and it's still expensive on FanDuel as well, but considerably less ownership, still playing a lot of minutes. I'd rather play Hedman, but just kind of want to point out that he's still playing a lot.
Okay. Next one seems important according to the chat, and I kind of agree with them here. Dallas Stars at the 3.1 total heading into Winnipeg. The Jets have a 2.9. How come the most important games are always 6 over-unders? Like, I feel like that is like a trend. I don't know what it is. Scott Wedgwood against Connor Hellebuck. Looks like Mason Appleton still on the top line with Connor and Scheifele. Cole Perfidi, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Blake Wheeler on the Star side. Top line the same. Second line, Dennis Gurianov kind of is there until he isn't. Cliffy, not too much ownership there is some ownership on the Dallas top line here, but 5-6% for them, not anything extraneous. The Jet side, we have the flow chart. It has seen some wear and tear already this season. Might have to get a new cover sheet here. This is a pretty good spot for them with Wedgwood in net. And you don't see them overly chalky here tonight. So what are you doing with Winnipeg?
Yeah. The way Winnipeg runs their lines, Scheifele, Connor, and Appleton will not see much of that Dallas top line. And I think that's important to note because that Dallas top line is legitimately one of the best lines in the league at both ends, both offensively and defensively. But their second and third lines, not so much. In fact, both the second and third lines have been below average defensively so far this season. And those are the lines that Winnipeg's going to see a lot of. And trust me, I've made fun of Mason Appleton a lot, and he does not belong on that top line. But what I will say is that as they've started to play more together, they've started to look better offensively. At least their expected goals numbers are now well above average, which feels weird to say considering how poorly that trio started the season. Kyle Connor at 5,900 on DK. Like, if this guy's shooting 13% instead of I think he's shooting 4% or something like that so far this season. He's a $7,500 or $8,000 winger. I do like that Winnipeg top line here in this matchup. Wedgwood is a downgrade from Ottinger. Like I said, I think Connor's really cheap. That line's starting to play better, and Dallas is the most penalized team in the league so far this season. The penalty kill is not really that great either. The goaltending's kind of saved them, Ottinger specifically at times. But if you're going to give this Winnipeg team, 5 power plays or something like that tonight, and plus we know all the minutes that they're going to play. Kyle Connor loves to shoot. I honestly don't mind Winnipeg 1 here tonight. I would, leave Appleton, take him off, do what you want there. But I think at the very least, Scheifele and Connor make a nice line. On the flip side, I do like the Dallas top line here tonight. They're going to get the second and third lines from Winnipeg in matchups, and neither of those are very good defensively. There's two problems. One, we always bring it up. Dallas doesn't play them a lot of minutes, so they have to be really efficient with the minutes that they do play. And then there's Connor Hellebuck. He's just been an absolute nightmare for opposing teams so far this season. So I do like the Dallas top line. I wrote them up in the Power Plays article. They're absolutely in consideration for me here tonight. I think I kind of like the Winnipeg top line in a nutshell a little bit better. Just because of the depth matchups and because of, they could see a ton of power play time here tonight.
Agreed. Jake, what side do you like better in this game?
I like Dallas 1 better, but I actually do agree with Cliffy. I'm a Winnipeg 1 hater, but I actually think you can 5-on-5 stack them. I mean, Connor's just one of the more underpriced players. There's not a lot of, bad prices tonight on DK. I think they did a pretty good job with pricing. If you like tighter pricing, he's one there. He's probably like $1,500 too cheap. So I think the stack is fine. You can easily go, if you don't want to play Appleton, if you don't want to play the third wheel, you want to get a little different, you go Connor Scheifele and Dubois, top power play. 3 legitimate players, all getting, all very involved on the power play. Stack them up with Morrissey if you'd like. I did not know Dallas was one of the more penalized teams in the league. Like, in seasons past, they haven't been. So that is surprising to hear, but it makes me like the Winnipeg power play 1 stack a little bit more.
No one runs hotter on the empty net than Winnipeg 1. There is no data to back that up, but that team always scores on the empty net. That line specifically.
I remember seeing last year that the 3 years prior, it was Wheeler, Connor, and Scheifele had scored more empty net goals than any other team's trio. So there is data to back that up.
Yeah. There you go. It just, that's how the flow chart got created because we just got mad about it. Anyway, moving to the blue line, Miro Heiskanen up to 5,700. I still think he's fine in Dallas 1 stacks. Esa Lindell, 3,100, I think is fine. Colin Miller, 3,500 is okay, but not super exciting there. And I hate that Josh Morrissey somehow has hung on to his power play 1 designation for the past 3 seasons. I wish it was Neil Pionk, but I guess Morrissey's fine. Nate Schmidt also fine. Anyone else to add there, Cliffy?
One sub 3K guy I'm considering is Brendan Dillon on DraftKings. That's honestly about it from this game for me. Not a game where I'm really excited about the D-man.
Okay.
Agreed. Yep, nothing to add.
Don't forget to take advantage of the risk-free BetMGM offer. Free bet up to $1,000 and 2 months of Stokastic Platinum for free. Just click the link in the description, or Harry Carey might yell at you. Hi! You might make an appearance tonight. We don't know yet. I might have some caffeine in between shows. Look out. Anyway, we got 2 games left. We probably should get to them. Jake has missed 69 meetings and huddles. I'm sure he's like 7 hours behind on his work. Nashville with a 2.9 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 3.1 total. UC Saros, Martin Jones, Senor Fiesta, Party Marty Jones. Looks like we got some confirmation on the Preds lines, which is nice because we haven't. And they switched them up in the third period of their last game. It's going to be Forsberg, Granlund, Duchesne, Niederreiter, Ryjo, Sanford, Seattle, Burakovsky, Wenberg, Bjorkstrand, Schwartz, Beniers, Eberle. Not too much ownership on Nashville 1 here. They just haven't been great. That being said, Martin Jones doesn't inspire confidence. Seattle has been pretty good defensively. It's just the goaltending has been the question. Jake, are you getting – I know you're getting at least 80% Yossi. Like, that is just contractually in your contract. But, like, are you getting to Nashville 1 here tonight? I
don't think I am. I'm a little surprised they're not higher in our projected ownership. Under 3%. I figured they would be a little bit higher. Maybe they will be when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think because we got line confirmation. People were maybe like, maybe, but now that.
Yeah, and I mean Granlund projects pretty poorly, but he's the cheapest guy and he's power play 1, so I think people will be fine throwing him in. I don't love Nashville one in a vacuum at 3%. They're okay if you want to throw in them with Yossi, sure. I really like the Seattle side. So Josh, you mentioned Nashville one hasn't played very well. They played a little bit better offensively. Defensively though, I'm seeing almost 3 expected goals against per 60. And both of the top 2 lines for Seattle have been really awesome offensively. Especially I want to point out the Wenberg line. This is not a bit. Wenberg is I think Cliffy's called him a good playmaker. He just never shoots. And so that's fine. You'll take the 3 assists.
He's no Yori Laterra.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know about that. But yeah, I mean, I really like Seattle 1, the Wenberg line. I like Seattle 2 a lot. I think that's probably going to be the one that is higher owned because of the fancy power play 1 tags on Schwartz, Beniers, and Eberle. But yeah, I think I'm going to be heavy on both of the top 2 Seattle lines. I like that they have a good total, but not a great one. And, they project as good values, but not great. They might get a little bit lost in the shuffle here tonight.
Yeah. And the one thing that does worry me is UC Saros. But again, like Nashville, once you get past that Yossi pairing, even with Yossi on the ice, they're not great defensively. Saros has bailed them out a bunch. Saros can only do so much. Predator is pretty bad on the PK. So I know you like Seattle 1, Jake. Any interest in Seattle 2 there, Cliffy?
I agree. I have interest in both lines, but I agree on the Wenberg, Burakovsky, Bjorkstrand line. They're going to face off against what's not a great defensive Nashville top line. Bjorkstrand and Burakovsky's been scoring a little bit. Bjorkstrand still stink. It just feels like eventually he's just going to have just a huge monster game, and all the regression is going to come at once. So Wenberg, Bjorkstrand, Burakovsky for me, 3.2 expected goals so far this year. The problem is they haven't been playing a ton. I got to think that's related to the inability to finish. Like if they start scoring, they're going to start playing more. So Wenberg, Bjorkstrand, Burakovsky in a pretty good matchup against Nashville 1. That's what I like the most from the Seattle side.
Yeah, and going to the blue line here, there just isn't much. It's either going to be Yossi or Dunn for me. Anyone else you like there, Cliffy?
No. Well, I'll just mention Matthias Ekholm on DK. He's one of those guys that's priced in the low 3s that I think is playable. But I'm not running out to play him. It's just, if you have 3,300, he's fine to put in.
Yeah. And we know how much Roman Yossi Jake has, but another one of his little favorite sneaky plays is Carson Soucy. How much Soucy you getting to?
I'm a Soucy guy. I didn't know that.
You are.
Yeah, I had stretches where I think he was playing a decent amount of minutes. No, he's mid salary, so whatever. He might play 17 minutes, 18 minutes. You're probably not going to do a whole lot better tonight. So yeah, I don't mind the Soucy call if he's free.
Yeah, it's just really Yossi or Dunn are the guys from this game. But if you do need mid price, you might do worse than Carson Soucy. Let's get to the last game of the night, and it feels important. This is a late night hammer. We talk about late games. This is actually a big old hammer. We have the Minnesota Wild with a 3.2 total heading into Los Angeles. The Kings also have a 3.2 total. Marc-Andre Fleury is confirmed. I would imagine it's going to be Johnny Quick for the Kings. Both of these teams, penalty kill wise, big mess. Kirill Kaprizov getting up there in price, 8,700. Matt Zuccarello, 7,500. I never thought I'd see Matt Zuccarello at 7,500, especially for his skill set where he doesn't shoot a ton, but every time they score a power play goal, it feels like he's involved. Jake, I'll start with you here. From a full stack perspective, I think my preferred would be the Joel Eriksson Matthew Boldy combo. That being said, because they're going to avoid Danault, Moore, and Arvidsson, who is a pretty high event line. But both these teams' penalty kills, to me, scream power play stack. So how are you handling this game?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to pick just one here, just one line, because I think there's there's probably 5 lines in play here for me as an MME player, because I'm including LA3 for sure. I don't love third lines on huge slates, but when one of your third liners is Kevin Fiala at 4,200,
revenge
we talked about what's that?
Revenge Street for Fiala tonight.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, you got to bump him up for that. Give him a couple thumbs up in FC. He's playing with two guys that are mid-salary, Kapari and Grundstrom. So it's a super cheap 3-man if you want to do that, or just make it a 2-man. We talked about some expensive spots, Tampa Bay, Edmonton. And you're going to need some cheap skaters. And I think LA3 is a good way to get some of those. A little bit more expensive LA2, one of my favorites on the night. I don't think we have to talk about them too much because it looks like the public's with them. That's one that I don't mind being overweight on. I know they're going to be one of the more popular fillers, but I don't really care. I think this game is going to be, at the very least, high event. So there's going to be stuff to like, whether it's skaters or if the goals aren't going in. The goalies, I think, are both in play, especially Fleury at 3% ownership for 7,600. LA is a team that attempts a ton of shots, and if they're putting them on goal, Fleury's a good enough goalie still, where you could see like the 40-43 save performance. And even if he gives up 3 goals, if his team wins, first of all, that means his team's scoring goals, which means the stack is probably going off. And so I really like both sides here and correlating it with the goalies, with whatever team you're going with.
Yeah, and something Cliffy has mentioned a bunch is LA2 fully correlated on the second unit sees almost the same time on the power play as that top line. Now that top line for the Kings coming in lower owned. Cliffy, you going Kings 1 here?
I don't mind Kings 1 here. Like, they are coming in with much less ownership. They've been really good since Gabe Vilardi jumped to that line. 4.1 expected goals generated, 2.7 actual goals. Like, if they can ever start shooting 8 or 9% instead of 6%, like, they're really going to start filling the net. I wonder how that second line for Minnesota is going to hold up with Jordan Greenway playing his first game back. And he's been in and out of the lineup with injuries all year. So, like, how long can he last? Considering the ownership, I do like LA1 a little bit more, but at LA2's price, I think it's pretty hard to ignore them. So I think, I agree with Jake. They make a nice filler. On the Minnesota side, I think I'd be leaning more towards some sort of power play stack.
Yes.
I don't want to play Freddie Gaudreau at 3,800. I don't think Jordan Greenway min price I think is fine, but I think it'd be doing something like Kaprizov and Boldy, or Kaprizov, Eriksson, Ek, and Boldy, or Kaprizov, Boldy, and even Kalen Addison. Even though he's fairly expensive, Los Angeles just takes a lot of penalties. I think the 5th most in the league. So Minnesota's top power play has been great this year. They should get a lot of chances here tonight. So I think it's Minnesota power play stack and LA1 for me.
Yep, I concur. Moving to the blue line, Kalen Addison, power play quarterback for the Wild. Not a lot of people like playing him. I like adding him in. If you aren't going to use Addison, I think Spurgeon and Brodin quite all right. I think, Brodin might be the highest owned of the 3, but, I probably go, if I'm power play stacking, I'm adding in Addison. Otherwise, I'm going Brodin, then Spurgeon. On the Kings side, Drew Doughty, 4,900. He's on the ice like half the game. Hasn't really done much with it, but that price is fine. Sean Dursey, if using LA2, is fine. Anyone else, Cliffy?
No, that's about it. Dursey's seen an ice time drop over his last few games, which kind of worries me, but still a good power play spot. Still puts up good peripherals. So, I don't mind him.
Anything else to add there, Jakey Poo?
I think Dursey's probably the guy I'm one-offing the most here. I wouldn't one-off Doughty. I would include him in my LA1 stacks, and that's really about it. Dursey, I think you can include him with LA2 or play him by himself. I'm not as concerned. Guys with good peripherals, there's going to be some games where Dursey plays like 16 minutes, and it's going to be frustrating, but there's also going to be games where he plays 22 minutes and he's live for one or both of the bonuses. So those are guys that I'm just kind of in on when they're priced like that, and you just take the good with the bad, I guess. Yeah.
And before we get out of here, remember we're sponsored by BetMGM, and coming up after us is more of us. We have the NHL Live Before Lock with Cliffy and myself. Jake has to catch up on his work. We appreciate him coming on a lot. This 3-man show was a lot of fun, even though my head. Anyway, goalies and hat trick picks. Jake, who you liking in net tonight?
Yeah, so I mentioned Fleury. I think he, if you're one-offing or if you're playing Minnesota stack, I really, really like Marc-Andre Fleury. Just be prepared that one could get out of hand quickly if LA is going on a bunch of power plays. Just as a general strategy for goalies on DraftKings, you want guys that are going to see volume. And I think both guys in that game are candidates for that. Let's see. I saw Carter Hart's ownership is really high. I don't actually love that, even at 7,300. Other guys, I'm scrolling up a little bit here. Any Varlamov for you guys? 6,800. Is that price right?
That price is right. Yeah, maybe.
It's not great. Yeah, I mean it's pretty ugly, but just because we don't know what's going on with the Rangers lines, maybe they struggle out of the gate, and then you could see 35, 40 saves. Yeah, it's not a great Talbot maybe.
I think if I'm spending down, if I want to take a stab, it's going to be Jake Allen at 7,100. Before I get to Varlamov, it's 6,800, but that's just me.
That's fair.
Cliffy?
I wrote up Vanacek in the Power Plays article, which I can't believe, but he's projecting pretty well. He's leading by projected saves in our projections so far, so I don't mind Vanacek. Logan Thompson, I think if you want a cheap-ish goalie on the road going into Toronto, I think I don't think a lot of people are going to be rostering Logan Thompson against the Leafs. He could see decent volume. He's played really well this year. Connor Hellebuck also has a pretty reasonable price at home in that Dallas matchup. So Vanacek, Hellebuck, Thompson are really the guys that I'm looking at. Yeah, and
I'll add in another punt. Like Karel Vejmelka at 6,900. Like he's a guy who can get you like 34 of 37 and or 35 of 38, get the bonus and maybe hit value at 6,900. Don't mind him if you're taking a stab. If you're fading the Sabres, spending up options, obviously Igor is in play, but 8,500. Don't really like investing a ton of money in goalie there. He has to get a shutout there for his upside. Same with Ville Husso at 8,400. Cliffy, who are you looking at as your hat trick pick of the night?
He's going to break through tonight. I'm going with Kyle Connor.
Jake?
Oh man, I will take Vladimir Tarasenko.
Ooh. I hope you're right.
Josh, you got Bjorkstrand, I'm assuming?
No, Jonas Donskoy not in the lineup tonight, so I cannot take him. I'm going to go Matt Boldy.
I like it.
For Jake, and thank you, Jake, for coming on. It was a lot of fun doing this three-man show. For Cliffy, we have a producer today, Tyler, behind the sticks, probably fell asleep because the show almost went 2 hours. My bad. We will be back at 6 p.m. Eastern for Live Before Lock. So check out that BetMGM deal. We love you as our sponsor. See you in Discord. Good luck, everybody.